Hi all, I have a fascinating game to show you from the recent titled arena for Bullet Chess, where I nearly came in the top 100, just outside the top 100. I had a blast myself. Magnus Carlsen was pretty late for the tournament, more than half an hour late, and he ended up in the top 3. Opperwezen ended up in the top 10. They had a very interesting encounter in this arena. Magnus Carlsen played G3, so Benko's opening, and Opperwezen reacted with A5, so a Ware opened, W-A-R-E, Ware. This is a reverse Ware. Usually the Ware opening is 1A4, so you can say maybe this is like a reverse Ware. We have Bishop G2, Rook A6, so Opperwezen is ignoring the opening principles that you should really be developing your minor pieces, not your major. So it's interesting. So the philosophy behind that generally is that your major pieces, like your rooks and your queen, they're subject to tempo gain. The opponent can actually quite often accelerate their development. So this is interesting. Where is this rook going here? We see knight f3, and now we see h5, so activating the other rook. So Opperwezen's moves at the moment are just based on his rooks. And after castling again, he's extending the scope of his rook and offering the possibility of white winning a pawn. But the rooks could gang up. They could double if this is taken. You can imagine things like G5 and Rook H6, for example, could be on the cards. And all of a sudden, black's got maybe an attacking position here. So this is ignored, actually. White just castles here, and we have H4. D4, and now H takes G. Magnus Carlsen captures away from the centre. This has a slight downside. It's kind of weakening this diagonal potentially. We see now Rook F6, which is really interesting actually, after C4. If we look at an alternative, Knight E5, exchanging off a pair of rooks, if you run this through like the latest Stockfish, it thinks black's already equal here. And what's worse, funny enough, on Bishop takes, if Knight C6, Knight takes, the Knight has used up quite a few moves just to capture here. And after D takes, black's actually slightly better from a technical perspective. If you look at the position, it does seem to make sense that this would be evaluated as better for black. So fascinating stuff, all completely rule-breaking. But the idea that you can actually get this kind of really kind of piece-active position from an opening which is so rare is interesting. And we've got the pressure on the D file. So anyway, we see C4, D6, Knight C3, Knight D7, E4. Now Rook G6, Bishop F4, now E6, E5, Bishop E7. And actually Opperwezen with Bishop E7, okay, he's ruling out a bit more the G5 square. And he's also facilitating potentially Knight H6 to F5. We see Queen E2, Knight H6, Rook A1, now Knight F5. This looks like an interesting position. D5 is actually now a mistake, believe it or not. It does weaken what I call the so-called diagonal of death here. And we have actually D takes E5, Knight takes, now Bishop C5 check. And this is very awkward all of a sudden for Magnus Carlsen. He plays actually Rook F2, offering an exchange sacrifice. On King H1, Knight takes G3 check is possible. And after Rook takes G3, this is actually a really kind of strong looking attack, and it looks as though, hold on, black's king is in trouble. Surely not the case. This is actually okay. If white's best is Knight H6 here, then that's not a good indication that white is doing well. Black's doing very, very well there. So we see Rook F2, Bishop takes F2 check. In fact, in this position there is actually a much more crushing move than Bishop takes F2 check. Knight takes E5, because after Bishop takes, Knight E3, and here, for example, Rook D2, Knight G4 is nasty. So if Knight E4, Bishop takes F2 check, then Knight takes E5, and then castling black's much better. And if instead of Bishop takes we have Queen takes, then Bishop takes F2 check, F6, and here just E5, and black's better. So anyway, Bishop takes F2 was played, Queen takes. We have Knight takes, Bishop takes, and now Queen G5, Knight E4. What was black threatening for Knight E4? Now this is a token move just to see what black would be threatening, and knight e3 would actually hit the rook and hit the bishop. If rook e1 queen takes and then queen g5, black's actually doing very well here. So knight e4 hitting the queen goes to h5, and now bishop f3 hitting the queen again, queen h3, and now bishop takes c7. This clears the way for a pretty dangerous pawn, which does create lots of winning chances, this passed pawn potential. Black now castles d6. We have bishop d7, and now actually a critical mistake, knight c5. And this demonstrates to me, weakness of the last move crops in time pressure situations. Even with the very, very strongest players in the world, the act of putting energy from one location to another does have a dark downside to it. Very, very often, it's a logical dark downside that it weakens g3, and black could have actually pounced on this fact, emphasized this fact, like underlined it, emphasized, maximized this weakness of the last move. I mean, what do you think black could have played here? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video after knight c5, it looks very logical. It's great intent. It's a very, very nice, lucrative intent to unblockade this pawn and hit the bishop. It seems with tempo. On a good day, this would be with tempo, but black could actually just play knight takes g3 here, just blasting through the king. If h takes, rook takes, and then bishop c6 would be a killer pin exploitation. This would be the key point here. So this would be very, very unpleasant for white. This crashing through with like this, that'd be absolutely winning. So yeah, very, very interesting that this is such a critical mistake. We have now a mistake in return, counter mistake, bishop c6. And now actually, after bishop takes, the intent is actually shown up here because we have d7, which not only is about the pawn, it unveils the defense of g3. So white is actually technically winning. Now, rook d8 is with the motive of trying to weaken that g3, trying to lure the bishop away from g3. Very exciting stuff. Knight e4 is played, but it turns out here, this is a counter mistake here. Knight e4 is a terrible mistake. White should have actually now triumphed, in theory, with this passed pawn. Guess what white could have played here? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay. Bishop takes d8. Yeah, the pawn's crashing through here because in this position, there's a way of slowing down black's attack considerably and making all about white as the center stage actor. The main actor here could be about white if white plays something which interferes with black's action. How can we stop black's action here? What do you think is a good move for white here if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? This didn't happen, but okay. Bishop g5, yeah, it would have slowed down considerably black, and if rook takes, then d8, queen, and then taking the rook, and there's no problem here. White's got a huge advantage. But unfortunately, with knight e4, this is a blunder position. After queen g4, rook e1, now knight h4 threatens knight f3 check. So again, there's no real time, it seems, for bishop takes d8, or is there? Or is there? White defended f3 with rook d3. In fact, bishop takes d8 again, and if knight f3, this position is still good after knight f2 for white. This pawn is still emerging as the hero. After taking here, this protected pawn is going to be queening. So yeah, there was still time to celebrate this passed pawn. But now, after rook d3, guess what black plays, which wipes out white's dreams and hopes and aspirations, all wiped out with this next move. What do you think Opperwezen plays here? Okay. Just rook takes d7, yeah, which is trying to deflect the rook, as well as case taking away that powerful passed pawn, deflecting away from f3. And after knight f2, now guess what happens? If rook takes, then there's knight f3 check. Again, this weakness of the last move celebration. We're trying to prompt the opponent for weakness of the last move. So knight f2 was played, and guess what Opperwezen played here, which finishes the game? Okay, just rook takes d3, yeah, weakens that f3 square fatally. And Magnus resigned. If knight takes g4, knight f3 check, and then knight takes e1. And black would be, two exchanges, well, more than two exchanges up here. a rook up and the exchange up. So yeah, it shows that in bullet chess at least, you can play a pretty unorthodox opening and live to tell the tale, even against the world chess champion. So I thought this is a fascinating game. And also, I thought it was instructive how diagonal of death still holds up as an issue. Doesn't matter if the opponent's played a ridiculous opening. So this kind of provocation, come and get me, weakening the diagonal was interesting. So black was actually technically doing really well after d takes. And there was an even more crushing continuation here available in this position. So than what was played with bishop takes. There was knight takes. Even better. It was actually, no issues, it seems, to speak of for black here, especially after knight g4 hits everything. But anyway, yeah. So white could have triumphed with the d pawn. After bishop takes c7, it seems that would be the logical, winner of this game. But it so happened that knight c5 was too ambitious, weakening g3, even for that moment, while the bishop's not actually protecting g3. So a pretty fascinating game. And then, missing the opportunity for knight takes g3 though. So the game was a kind of roller coaster ride, I thought. So a fun roller coaster ride where the f3 is now the issue. So yeah, very, very interesting game. I hope you get some inspiration from it after rook takes d3. That, in fact, you can be fun-loving on the faster time limits, and on that subject of fun-loving openings, yeah, especially on the faster time limits, check out Kingscrusher TV /chess openings. So a lot of weird and wacky openings and gambits. They work really well the faster the time limits actually, and the more tactical you are. You can see that tactics, once tactics open up on diagonal and stuff, it doesn't really matter what opening you've played. So please let me know what you think about this game. Outrageous game, outrageous opening. Where there's a will, there's a way. Ware, W-A-R-E. Ware opening. Okay. And comments, questions, likes, shares, subscribes, all appreciated. Congratulations to Opperwezen. Okay. Who is the international master, Vincent Morphy. Okay. Thanks very much.